Hello everybody and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. My name is Jason C. and if you're a subscriber, thanks so much for the support. If you're new to the channel looking for the latest in whiskey and bourbon news and reviews, you have found the right place. So hit that subscribe button below and hit that bell notification so you know when I'm putting out a new video, or you can join in on one of my live streams. Last fall, Heaven Hill discontinued their famous 6-year old style bottled and bond bourbon. The Expression was a Kentucky only release and a fan favorite at just $15. Back in June, Heaven Hill Distillery announced the release of a new 7-year-old bottled and bond bourbon whiskey that is 1 year older and $25 more expensive to take its place. Well, that new bottled and bond is here, and it's today's review on the Mash and Drum. The bottled and bond designation has been a seal of quality of American whiskey since the Bottled and Bond Act of 1897. Bourbons that bear the label must age a minimum of 4 years in a federally bonded warehouse and be bottled at exactly 100 proof. To further ensure consistency, everything inside the bottle must be of the same class of whiskey and made at the same distillery in the same distilling season by the same distiller. The new Heaven Hill 7-year-old bottled and bond Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, according to those behind it, traces its brand origins back to 1939 when, upon release, it reportedly quickly became the #1 selling bourbon whiskey in the state of Kentucky. Now, for Heaven Hill, bottled and bonds are a historic part of their bourbon portfolio. One of its founding brands was a bottled and bond, and they've also acquired many bottled and bond labels over the years, resulting in producing the most bonded whiskeys of any distillery today. As I mentioned last year, Heaven Hill discontinued its popular 6-year bottled and bond Expression, and the whiskey community wasn't happy about it, and understandably so. The popular bottle was one of the best value buys in all of bourbon, and one of those awesome bourbons on the shelf with a bold 6-year-old age statement, a bottled and bond designation, and a price point of only about $12 to $15. But now the new Heaven Hill bottled and bond is here with some changes to the bottle, label, age, and price. Made from the distillery's traditional bourbon mash bill, mingled in small batches, and bottled at 100 proof, this new 7-year-old offering of the namesake brand exceeds the minimum 4-year aging requirements for a bottled and bond. The distilled spirits plan or DSP number of the Bernheim Distillery in Louisville, DSP KY1, and that of Heaven Hill headquarters and bottling house in Bardstown, DSP KY31, are featured prominently on the face label. The words "This bourbon is 7 years old" is prominently featured in bold red letters on the bottom label also. According to the distillery, the new Expression will see wider distribution as well. So here's a close-up of the new bottle. Now, I love the new design here. It's classic, it's modern at the same time. The old white and green label has been changed to a more nostalgic-looking blue and off-white label with some of that red text below that includes the words, "This bourbon is 7 years old." The new bottle is hitting shelves now in California, Texas, New York, Georgia, Florida, Illinois, South Carolina, and Colorado, with plans on widening distribution in the future. The new offering also has an MSRP of around $40. So let's get a pour. Pretty good pop there. Let's pour it out. Nice size pour as always. All right, let's try this new Heaven Hill. Now, of course, we're going to do a comparison to the older bottle to see if this is $25 to $30 better than the discontinued 6-year. But first, let's get into the color and taste the new 7-year first. So let's take a closer look at the color here. And first, you see a nice bourbon color. It's not too dark, not too light either. It's kind of in the middle, kind of a light caramel color. Has some nice legs to it on the glass. Maybe kind of a maple syrup, little hints of a copper color there. Really nice bourbon color. All right, let's get into the nose. First thing that I get on the nose here is that honey roasted peanut character that I get on Heaven Hill. It's very sweet. It smells like a fresh box of Cracker Jacks. Ever go to a ball game, have some fresh Cracker Jacks? It smells like a fresh box of Cracker Jacks. As it opens up, and I've taken a few sips out of this bottle to kind of let it get past the shoulder, see what it turns into. It's definitely gotten a little bit sweeter as it's opened up. I get more of a sweet pecan note now on the nose. Definitely get your vanillas. This is kind of a lighter caramel. It's not too dark. Get some nice corn sweetness. Definitely get a good amount of oak on here too. There's, being a little bit older, it's 7 years old, which I really like Heaven Hill's products in that range, anywhere from 7 to 10, maybe 12 years old. It kind of stays in that nice sweet oak flavor. If you go down a little bit deeper, there's a slight orange zest note. You get a little bit of a citrus there too. It's a really nice nose. It's like I said, it's peanut forward. That's sweet pecan, a lot of caramel, vanilla. It's a really nice nose. It's a familiar nose from Heaven Hill if you've had their stuff before. So let's get into the palate and see what we get. Cheers. First thing that smacks the palate here is oak and butterscotch. You get a good amount of oak, some butterscotch, a little bit of tingly spice right on the front of the palate, which I really, really like. Then it kind of transitions mid-palate. You start getting that peanut flavor. And then, well, we're going to get into the finish because the finish is probably the most interesting part of the whole experience. But let's go for another sip here. Cheers. Yeah, so that corn sweetness. Second sip, you notice a ton of cinnamon. There's a lot of cinnamon on the palate here. And it comes in the form of like this peppery cinnamon spice. I like to use cinnamon red hots a lot. And that's what I get here a lot on the palate. It's like you just had a handful of red hot candy. And that lingering peppery cinnamon spice just kind of lingering on the palate. Then once it works its way back, it becomes honey roasted peanut again. And then you get some more oak there on the finish. Oak is kind of a present note throughout from beginning to end, but it kind of stays sweeter, and then as it works its way back, the oak becomes a little bit more dominant. So let's go for another sip here. Cheers. All right, so the third sip, the flavor's got a little bit muted. It's still good amount of sweetness, but now that oak and cinnamon and kind of that caramel is really kind of taking over. But again, the spice just lingers on the front of the palate. I just have this little tingling that's just sitting there. That's actually really nice about it. It makes it very interesting. And then as it works its way back, you get the peanut flavor, and then the finish is kind of just a culmination of all that spice. It just kind of hangs around the oak, the cinnamon. And then also you get a little bit of that citrus hint that I was getting in the glass. That little bit of orange zest kind of makes itself to be known there on the back of the palate a little bit. Let's go on for one last sip here. Cheers. Okay, so that sip was the fourth sip, and that was probably the least impressive one. That one, it came in, you still had some of that sweetness, a good amount of oak. There's definitely more of an oak presence in this one here, and just kind of that cinnamon vanilla spice really just kind of taking over. Good amount of oak, but I think the best part of this bottle so far is that lingering cinnamon spice kick that it has. It definitely has some good vanilla and caramels, but I think that tingliness that it gives you is probably the best attribute here. But let's compare it to these bottles and see how it stacks up. Okay, let's compare it to two other bottled in bonds. First, I want to compare it to the discontinued 6-year, and I also want to compare it to the Evan Williams bottled in bond, which is also made by Heaven Hill. It's available now, and you can actually get this for about 15 bucks. Okay, so first let's compare the noses, guys. So again, this has a really nice oak presence, very peanut forward, a little bit of that orange zest on there. Now, when you compare it to the one that was discontinued, okay, this is definitely a little bit lighter on the oak. This one does not have as, that 1 year, it's amazing what 1 year can do, because you could smell this, the extra oak, that extra year of oak presence here on the nose. But this one's a little bit darker, a little bit richer. But this one also has that quintessential, that peanut, that Heaven Hill honey roasted peanut characteristic. It's very similar, has the caramels, a little bit of citrus there too. Some sweet corn. You definitely get some oak on this one, but this one is just a little bit darker and richer. So if you're into an oakier flavor profile, then you'd probably like this one a little bit better. Let's add the Evan Williams in there. So the Evan Williams is actually probably a little bit more muted out of the three. If I'm going from nose, this is actually the strongest. This is kind of the middle, and then this is the lightest one. Again, this one to me isn't as peanut forward. It's got that peanut characteristic, but I think this one comes a little bit more honey, maybe a touch more fruit on this one. Definitely some more kind of a vanilla extract type aspect to it. You definitely get some oak here. Probably the same amount you get on this one. Yeah, actually this one is coming off a little bit fruitier now, which is interesting. Getting a little bit more of the orange spice on this one. Really nice. All right, yeah, as this one's opening up, it's getting a little bit fruitier. And this one is just kind of getting, this one's actually a little bit fruity too. Whereas this one, the oak and the caramels and that peanut flavor really kind of dominate. So let's go into the palate on this one and see how it stacks up. You know, it's pretty similar. The only thing I'll say, and I've been saying it here, that this just has a more oakier type of presence on the palate. This one also has a good amount of that cinnamon spice kind of working its way through here. Go for another sip. Yeah, this one's sweet. This one has a little bit more of orange zest on the palate too that I'm getting than this one. I feel like that extra year, the oak is kind of taking that over a little bit more. Whereas this one, you're able to get a little bit more of that citrus bounce to go along with that vanilla, some of that oak, and some of that sweetness. Yeah, and again, I'm still getting a little bit of that cinnamon spice that I'm getting in this one. Literally from front to back. The finish, it just lingers there. And I'm glad actually this has that attribute, because that was one of my favorite attributes on this bottle before they discontinued it. So let me have a little sip of water here. All right, let's try the Evan Williams, which is available now for 15 bucks like this used to be, and see how it stacks up. You know what, that's pretty good. It's pretty close. It doesn't have as much of a spice kick like these two do. It's a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, but it still has that 100 proof. It's got a nice finish to it. Let's go for another sip. Oh, that second sip was even better. Got some more caramels there, more of the fruit aspect to it. All three of these are really good. This one, again, is just darker, richer, has more of that oak presence. This one was absolutely delicious. It's a shame you can't get it, but if you don't want to spend the $40 here, you can get this for $15, and it's actually pretty close. It doesn't have the super richer oak characteristic to this. If you're looking for something oakier, this might be the one you want to go with. But all in all, yeah, the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond for about 15 bucks is a damn good buy if you don't want to spend $40 here. So ever since I got this bottle, I've been trying to make sure that my love for this bottle does not in any way, shape, or form kind of affect my opinion on this bottle. But from a business perspective, I can understand why Heaven Hill had to make the change. With the bourbon boom still happening, they had to recognize that this old 6-year Bottled and Bond bourbon that was too good and too loved to keep at that $15 price point was an opportunity for their bottom line. One thing I'm happy about is that instead of this being a Kentucky-only available offering, this will be available nationwide eventually. The big problem I do have with this is that Kentucky, the state where this is made and that made this particular bourbon so special to find, is not one of the first states to get it. Now, you can legal speak and give me market share statistics and defend that decision, but I just don't agree with that. Lastly, the thing is, if you've had the old bottle before, the value of that bottle with that 6-year age statement and that $15 price is what made it so special. I feel knowing that the new bottle is now 40 bucks kind of strips that away a bit, and now means you have to compare it to other great bottles like Wild Turkey Rare Breed, Knob Creek Single Barrel, Russell's Reserve Single Barrel, Four Roses Single Barrel in that specific price range. All bottles that I would probably take over this at that price point. Now, as for the bourbon, I do think it's very good. The extra year of age has given it a bit more of an oakier profile while keeping the quintessential flavors of Heaven Hill with peanut, caramel, butterscotch, and corn. It's got a really nice cinnamon aspect to it that kind of lingers from the front of the palate to the back. Personally, I don't think that this is $25 better than the old bottle. It is very good though, but if you don't want to spend $40 on this, then the Evan Williams Bottled and Bond for 15 bucks is a damn good substitute. All right, guys, well, I hope you enjoyed this review for the brand new Heaven Hill 7-year-old Bottled and Bond bourbon. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Let me know if you've had this, if you've compared it to the old bottle, what you think of it. Do you feel like it's worth 40? Would you have other bottles except this one at that price point? Yeah, definitely talk to me. I love talking with you guys. And as I always say, it is not about the whiskey. It is the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum. Take care.